The clock had long since surrendered to the witching hour when Ethan Shaw finally dragged himself through the grand oak doors of the old Beaumont estate in Willow Creek. At 29, this sharp-jawed deputy sheriff was the golden boy of the family, a brooding masterpiece of rugged charm and unyielding resolve. His chiseled features and that badge turning heads from the bustling streets of downtown Seattle all the way back to the Sleepy Hollow. Infamous for his iron will, his silver tongue that could cut like a switchblade, and a rudeness that bordered on legend, yet beneath it all burned a fierce, unspoken devotion to his mother. He lived for her smiles, would lay down his life without a second thought. Sorry, Mom. Aunt Fiona, I swear I got tangled in a case that wouldn't quit. Won't happen again, Ethan murmured, his voice a low rumble laced with genuine remorse as he shrugged off his leather jacket. The weight of the day still clinging to him like fog off the bay. Fiona Beaumont's eyes, sharp as the autumn frost outside, narrowed in that way only a mother's could, equal parts fire and heartache. Ethan, your Aunt Gemma was due in from the city tonight. You were supposed to pick her up, son. But you forgot. Left her and that precious girl of hers to fend for themselves on those winding back roads from Seattle. Do you have any idea what could have happened? A crash, a breakdown in the dead of night. Anything. Ethan's lips parted, a retort dying on his tongue like a spark in the rain. What could he say? That dragging a headstrong teenage firecracker like Daisy through the urban sprawl and back wasn't exactly his idea of a joyride. I told her, hell, I practically begged her, to wait for me after my shift. I'd swing by the station, grab her on the way. But no, she insisted on that solo trek. Stubborn as a mule, that one. Fiona sighed, her words tumbling out like a pent-up river finally breaching its banks. She couldn't rest until every worry, every whisper of her heart had been laid bare. And Ethan? He listened with the patience of a saint, his broad shoulders absorbing it all, his dark eyes softening just for her. It was their ritual, this quiet unraveling under the chandelier's golden glow. No trouble on the road, right? Everything okay? Ethan glanced at his watch, the question slipping out casual as a summer breeze, though his pulse ticked with unspoken concern. Oh, no drama this time, thank the stars, Fiona replied, waving a hand dismissively, though her voice warmed like sunlight on slate. Sydney, that sweet boy from the old neighbor's place, scooped them up right on the highway. Dropped them here at the estate safe and sound. What a gem he is. Jackie's son, you know, the one commuting to Seattle for those late-night classes at the university. Polite as they come, with a heart of gold. Ethan nodded, a faint smile ghosting his lips. Sydney, the kid was solid, no question. Their friendship had roots deeper than the ancient willows lining the drive. Late-night stakeouts turning into bull sessions over cold coffee. A decent soul in a world short on them. All right, then. Sounds like a clean getaway. I'm beat, Mom. Gonna crash hard. His gaze flicked to the phone buzzing insistently in his pocket, a lifeline pulling him toward solitude. I'll heat up some dinner for you, love. You need to eat before you drop, Fiona coaxed, her tone a velvet glove over steel, pure affection wrapped in that fierce maternal worry that could melt glaciers. Nah, not hungry. You head to bed. Night, Mom. He pressed a quick kiss to her forehead. The scent of her lavender soap a fleeting anchor, then turned toward the shadowed staircase, his boots echoing like distant thunder on the polished hardwood. How long do I have to wait, Ethan? Pick up already. The text from Aurora glowed on his screen, a siren call that tugged at the corners of his mouth into a reluctant grin. Her incoming ringtone sliced the quiet, and he swiped to answer, lifting the phone to his ear as he bounded up the steps 2 at a time, voice dropping to that husky drawl reserved just for her. Hey, trouble. But fate, that cruel playwright, had other lines in mind. In his haste, Ethan's shoulder clipped something soft, yielding, a whirlwind of silk and surprise that barreled into him like a summer storm. The phone flew from his grip, skittering across the landing with a traitorous clatter. Instinct overrode everything. He lunged, arms snaking around a slender waist to steady the falling figure, pulling her flush against his chest in a tangle of warmth and wildfire. The impact was a thunderclap, raw, electric, leaving her breathless, her cheeks blooming crimson under the hallway's amber. Light Daisy Carmichael, 16. Years of unbridled spirit wrapped in porcelain skin and eyes like midnight oceans, stumbled into the eye of the hurricane. Aunt Gemma's Spitfire daughter, all defiant curls and a beauty that could launch 1,000 ships or sink them just as quick. Ethan's grip tightened for a heartbeat, then snapped away like a live wire, his jaw clenching as he glared down at her, teeth grinding in the dim glow. "You blind or just trying to break something?" he snarled, voice a gravelly whip crack that echoed off the walls, bending down to snatch his phone from the floor. The screen was dark, dead, and marred with a jagged scratch that spiderwebbed like a fresh scar. Daisy flinched, her wide eyes darting like a cornered fawn, hands flying to cup her ears in a gesture so innocently childlike it twisted something deep in his gut. "Sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to. It was an accident, I swear," she stammered, her voice a fragile melody laced with apology, those full lips trembling just enough to disarm. "Sorry? Yeah, I'll pickle that apology and serve it up later," Ethan growled, flipping the phone over in his hands, the damage fueling a low, simmering fury that made the air thicken. Daisy's breath hitched. She backed away a step, then bolted, a blur of skirts and suppressed sobs, vanishing around the corner with the speed of a hunted doe. The haughty huntress shook out her tousled waves, composure snapping back like a well-oiled trap as she slipped into the guest suite, where Aunt Gemma waited like a sentinel in the wingback chair, her silhouette framed by the fire's dying embers. Daisy double-locked the door with a decisive click, then flung herself into her mother's arms, a triumphant giggle bubbling up like champagne. "Mission accomplished, Mom," she crowed, burying her face in Gemma's shoulder, the thrill of victory humming through her veins like a secret symphony. Gemma's laugh was a conspirator's whisper, low and laced with pride as she stroked her daughter's hair. "Well done, my fierce little warrior. Keep playing your cards this close to the vest, and that day will dawn sooner than you think. Ethan Shaw, the estate, all of it yours. But remember, darling, eyes on the prize. Never lose sight of the end game." Daisy preened under the praise, her pulse racing with the heady rush of her first conquest, blissfully blind to the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, the tempests she was unwittingly summoning, the heartaches that would soon crash like waves against Willow Creek's shores. Downstairs, Aurora stormed from the shadows, fury etching her features like lightning scars as she descended the stairs, each step a promise of reckoning, and the rest of the kin? Mere footnotes in the family ledger, names etched in polite obligation. But Riley? She was the singular flame amid three fierce brothers, a lone sister, the beating heart of their unbreakable trio. Darcy's daughter, that iron-willed matriarch still knee-deep in the cutthroat empire her late husband had forged from nothing. Victor Beaumont had crumbled under a merciless stroke just a year back, shuttled across oceans to the gleaming clinics of Zurich for every desperate fix modern medicine could throw at him. Fate, that indifferent thief, had left him a shadow, paralyzed, confined to the echoing halls of their sprawling estate in the misty hills of Evergreen Ridge, Washington. Now, Darcy shouldered it all. The boardrooms, the deals that danced on the edge of ruin, the relentless grind that aged her like fine bourbon. Her two youngest sons chased degrees in the neon haze of London and New York, while the eldest, married, battle-hardened, stood at her right hand, sleeves rolled up in the fray. This was the eve of farewell. The fragile interlude before dawn shattered everything. When Darcy's call crackled through the line, summoning him to the house so he could whisk Riley away for the Valima gown hunt, Shane didn't hesitate. He craved those stolen moments with her, the quiet alchemy of just the two of them. So he ditched the driver, slid behind the wheel of his sleek black Audi alone, the engine's low growl mirroring the anticipation coiling in his chest. Tires crunching over the gravel drive, he leaned on the horn, a sharp, impatient summons. He'd waved off the urge to barge inside, respecting the ritual of it all. Minutes stretched like taffy, and then there she was, Riley emerging from the grand double doors, a vision in a flowing lavender blouse embroidered with delicate silver threads, a matching shawl draped like a whisper across her chest. Her dark waves fell loose and untamed, framing a face so achingly innocent it could disarm a storm. Henna bloomed across her hands like forbidden tattoos, lending her the ethereal glow of a bride on the brink, fragile, luminous, on the cusp of forever. Shane's gaze softened, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips as he drank her in. Laughter danced in his eyes, hidden behind the easy charm that had closed 1,000 deals. Riley slipped into the passenger seat with a murmured, "Hello," her voice a soft current under the dashboard's hum, head bowed like a willow in the wind. She fidgeted with her nails, tongue darting nervously over her lips. that peculiar silence thickening the air like fog rolling off the sound. Shane clocked it all, the tremor in her poise, the way she shrank into the leather. Never pegged my girl for the shy type, he teased lightly, leaning just a fraction closer, his voice a warm baritone laced with curiosity. She jolted like a live wire, pressing against the door as if it were salvation, her wide eyes lifting to meet his, pools of unspoken terror, glistening with unshed rain. What is it? You okay? The damp shimmer in her gaze hit him like a gut punch, raw and unraveling. In the next breath, her composure shattered. Hands flew to her face and she dissolved into sobs that racked her slender frame, shoulders heaving like a ship in a gale. Shane slammed on the brakes, the car lurching to a halt on the shoulder, tires biting into the asphalt. He twisted toward her, heart hammering in bewildered alarm. Please, don't marry me. I'm not worthy of you. The words tore from her, raw and ragged, her flushed eyes burning with a desperation that clawed at the air between them. Riley, talk to me. Are you all right? He reached out, tentative as a man approaching a wild fawn, fingers brushing toward her trembling hands. But she recoiled, yanking them away, clutching them to her chest like sacred relics. Panic etched her features, a storm of fear that stripped her bare, 16 years of sheltered bloom, wilting under the weight of shadows he couldn't yet name. In that moment, Shane saw her truly, not the poised enigma he'd wooed, but a quivering bud, dwarfed by his 32 years of shadowed triumphs and tarnished armor. He'd always assumed he was the prize, the broad-shouldered tycoon girls chased in fevered dreams. But her plea? It landed like a blade, twisting in unfamiliar doubt. Her words a riddle that snared his thoughts. Not worthy. It clicked then, sharp as a safecracker's tumbler. She wasn't scorning his touch, but measuring herself against his empire, his stature, the Caldwell legacy that loomed like Everest. With a tenderness that belied his boardroom steel, Shane cupped her face in his palms, thumbs tracing the salt-streaked silk of her cheeks. She looked so damn breakable, a porcelain heart in a world of hammers, that he couldn't help it. His fingertips grazed her lips, soft as a vow, drawing them to his own in a feather-light promise. You don't have to fear me, Riley. Arranged or not, this is your call. I'll follow your lead every step. Think of me as a friend first, not that. I swear it. Her lips quivered against his touch, eyes locked in a fragile truce. Promise me, she whispered, voice fraying like old lace. Promise you'll do as I say. No touching, nothing. A wry half-smile ghosted his mouth, though he bit back the urge to laugh it off. Her terror was no jest, this skittish dance of inexperience and dread. He nodded solemnly, sealing the pact, even as he sensed the deeper fracture. She was unraveling, a girl haunted by ghosts he couldn't name. Tell me straight, why fight this marriage? What's really got you so scared? But the floodgates held. Her lower lip trembled, tears spilling like shattered stars, and Shane pulled her gently against his shoulder, one hand stroking the velvet curve of her cheek. Yesterday, their bond had been a tentative bridge, forged in polite glances and family whispers. Now, her sobs were a siren song, stirring the quiet waters of his resolve. She wanted to unburden, to spill the poison eating her from within, but the words lodged like thorns, her fear a living thing, coiling tighter. Even at the boutiques, she'd been a ghost. No spark in the mirrors, no delight in the silks he selected with painstaking care. She'd shrink behind him during fittings, a shadow in the spotlight he cast unwittingly. Worry gnawed at him like a winter wind. But the die was cast. Tomorrow's dawn would bring the rukhsati, and with it, a reckoning in the quiet hours after. He couldn't know the cataclysm awaiting in the velvet dark, the revelation that would shatter his world like fine crystal underfoot. No man, no matter how armored in control, could leash his desires through such exquisite torment. The night loomed, pregnant with apocalypse, a quake that would fissure the fragile foundations of their union, leaving fault lines no vow could mend. The coming day crackled with chaos, unspoken and inevitable. Despite his coaxing, Riley's lips stayed sealed, a vault of secrets. She wept in waves, shrank from his gaze, bolted toward escape with eyes wild as a cornered doe. He paced the hours till dawn, a caged lion, but retreat was impossible. Riley was his mother's chosen light, the balm to Zara Caldwell's weary soul, and he'd sooner carve out his heart than dim that glow. He knew the stakes. He wasn't some ordinary groom bartering affections. This was legacy, honor, the Caldwell name etched in granite. Come morning, when she appeared in her bridal finery, a cascade of ivory lace and heirloom pearls, she stole his breath, a vision so radiant he forgot to blink. Heavy embroidery clung to her like moonlight on water, transforming her into a siren of heartbreaking allure, her beauty a blade that pierced straight to his core. The Ruxadi unfolded in grandeur, the estate's manicured lawns awash in lanterns and laughter, a sea of well-wishers toasting the dawn of forever. Photographers coaxed romantic poses, but even then, her frame quivered under his arm at her waist, eyes downcast, fleeing the heat of his stare. No courage to meet the fire in his gaze, only the terror of unraveling in the crowd's embrace. As the convoy wound toward Caldwell Manor, a bastion of old money amid the evergreens, its turrets piercing the bruised sky, Riley's eyes widened, drinking in the opulence with stunned reverence. Rituals blurred into a haze, blessings murmured over rosewater and sweets, before a maid escorted her to the bridal suite, a sanctuary of silk drapes and flickering beeswax. Zara's joy overflowed like vintage champagne, no greater gift than her heart's desire under this roof, her son's life stitched whole at last. She'd watched him wander barren years, a ghost in tailored suits. Now vitality pulsed through him again. Pressing a kiss to Riley's forehead, she showered her with whispers of fortune. May your days bloom eternal, my dove, before gliding out, leaving the air thick with possibility. Riley's gaze roamed the room's splendor, crystal decanters glinting like captured stars, the four-poster bed a throne of whispered secrets. Her eyes snagged on the massive gilt mirror, holding her reflection captive for an eternity, until a rogue thought struck like lightning, panic's cold sweat beating her brow despite the fire's warmth. Downstairs, Shane still played host, weaving through guests with effortless grace. A note arrived via the butler. Retire to your chambers. She's waiting, his cousins, Zara's kin. Standing in for the sisters fate had denied him, had fussed over her earlier, draping her in laughter and borrowed jewels, mending the ache of solitude with sisterly warmth. But as Shane crossed the threshold, the very walls seemed to hush, breath held in suspense. He froze on the Persian rug, expectations crumbling like ash. This wasn't the fevered reunion he'd scripted in his mind. There she stood before the mirror, stripped to simple cotton shirt and pants, fingers combing through her unbound waves with mechanical detachment. Jewelry scattered like fallen stars, makeup a faint echo on her skin, the bridal gown slumped on the bed like a discarded dream, weeping opulence in defeat. Shane's eyes swept the transformed space, candles guttering low, petals strewn like blood on snow, before lingering on that forsaken dress, a hunger stirring to claim it, to claim her. In the firelit hush, you beat me to it, changed already? And here I was, hoping you'd wait. His tone was velvet over gravel, laced with that disarming smile, acutely aware of her fragility, no edge to his words. He wouldn't cage this wild thing. She drifted in her reverie, comb lost in the midnight tide of her hair. He closed the distance in measured strides, heart thundering a war drum, and with exquisite care, slipped his hand beneath her elbow, drawing her against the solid wall of his chest. So close now, her pulse fluttered against his ribs like a trapped bird, breaths mingling in the charged air. Riley went statue still, lungs seizing, clutching her racing heart as if to still its betrayal. Shane dipped his head to the shell of her ear, breath a warm zephyr. Smart move, honestly. In that gown? My resolve might have cracked wide open, couldn't have strung two coherent words together. But his murmur fell on deaf ears. Her mind was a maelstrom, replaying that cursed night, the agony's vice, the guttural sobs, the sterile hospital glare, and those venomous words still echoing like a curse. Darcy's hiss in the dim corridor. You tell no one. Bury it deep, forget. Terror surged, a tidal wave crashing through her veins. She wrenched free with frantic force, whirling to face him, body quaking like autumn leaves in a gale. Her eyes, raw, red-rimmed, bore into his, a feral plea that rooted him in place, 2 steps back, hands raised in surrender. She was a riddle wrapped in ruin, this girl he'd vowed to cherish. Before he could murmur her name, bridge the chasm, Riley lunged for the bedside vase, shattering it in a spray of porcelain shrapnel. A jagged shard gleamed in her fist, pressed to the pale column of her throat. "Stay back! One more step, and I swear, I'll end it. You can't come near me." "I'm not worthy!" The scream ripped free, primal and piercing, her face draining to ghostly pallor, tears carving rivers down her cheeks. Her hand trembled violently, the blade a hair's breadth from surrender. The room, mercifully soundproofed, swallowed the cry, else the Caldwell honor would have bled out in headlines from Seattle to the Sound. Shane staggered back, palms out, voice a lifeline tossed into the abyss. "Riley, easy. You won't do this. Listen, we're friends, remember? Just talk, no hands, no harm." I promised, but panic had her in talons. Limbs spasming, breaths ragged gasps. She was a tempest incarnate, fear's alchemy turning innocence to ash. Put it down. "Please, for me." His plea hung, velvet-wrapped steel, and with a fractured sob, the shard clattered free, skittering across the floor. She crumpled to her knees, forehead to the rug, body convulsing in waves of grief, agony's aftershocks, terror's cold grip, fragments of a nightmare half told. Shane surged forward, enveloping her in his arms, lips brushing her crown in rhythmic murmurs, willing calm into her storm. But he was flesh and fire too, a man adrift in the blaze of his own unspoken hungers. That night's specter clawed at him. No fortress of will could chain the inferno when desire boiled so near. Yet her pain was a sacred blade, carving mercy from his chaos. Eyes squeezed shut, he sagged against her, their forms entwined in exhausted truce. Cradling her like fragile glass, he carried her to the bed, settling her amid the downy pillows. A careless glint, the shard's edge, nicked her fingertip, crimson blooming on her alabaster skin like a forbidden rose. This porcelain girl, adrift in unseen tempests, what hell had forged her fractures? He couldn't fathom, only hold her closer, stroking raven strands from her fevered brow. A glass of water to her lips, cool and insistent, and she melted into his shelter, consciousness fraying at the edges, shock's cruel toll, blood pressure plummeting, energy ebbing like a receding tide. He knew the signs, had seen them in boardroom breakdowns and barroom brawls. But more than triage, he poured conviction into every touch. "I'm your anchor, Riley, through the dark, the dawn, always." Whispers of what-ifs haunted him. Perhaps another held her heart. This union forced like a ill-fitting crown. Why else spurn a husband like him, the man women stalked in whispers? Yet no suitor bartered honor for heartache. Spouses are each other's shelter, he thought, and whatever forge has scarred her, will temper it together. If only she glimpsed his truth, that rare breed of man who yields without breaking. She'd never bar his path. But her chains? Forged in silences deeper than he dreamed. Zara watched her son over breakfast the next morn, porcelain clinking like accusations in the sunlit solarium. His face, a mask of normalcy, couldn't fool her. No serenity in those storm-gray eyes, only the faint tremor of a man unmoored. The bombshell had landed like an avalanche, the Valima canceled in the dead of night. She'd grilled him till her voice cracked, but his refrain was a broken record. Family emergency. Details later. Trust me. Down the line, his manager's protest crackled. Invites are out, sir. The rivals will feast on this. Your reputation. Shane had clawed his way through corporate wars, amassing enemies like shadows at dusk. Every move was a minefield, breath held against the blast. But Riley's raw unraveling? It had forged this reckless shield. I said cancel it. Spin whatever yarn you need, illness, accident, the works. But don't call back. The Shane Caldwell barking orders was a Titan remade. One glimpse of that trembling wisp, and she'd burrowed into his pulse, weaving dreams of shared sunrises, claiming her as life's true north. He knew the poetry, man and wife, woven as one. The agonies she'd endured was enduring. They'd crest into joy, or he'd burn the world to ash. If her heart wandered elsewhere, he'd release her with grace, no stain on her light. Such chivalry wasn't minted for every fool. Grasp it, and she'd never flinch from his warmth. But her compulsions? A labyrinth none could map. that he had an unavoidable boardroom showdown, one he couldn't possibly bail on, no matter the stakes. We can always reschedule the whole spectacle, later when the dust settles. Zara's voice cracked like thunder over the bay, her eyes flashing with a mother's unbridled fury. You're out of your mind, Shane. Later? There's no later for this. So tell me, have you even crawled out from under whatever rock you've been hiding beneath? Handing my son's heart to this girl. I've played right into some cruel cosmic joke. Zara didn't hold back. Her words a barrage of raw, unfiltered wrath that hung heavy in the sun-dappled breakfast nook, silverware clinking like distant accusations. Shane met her gaze, unflinching, the weight of her disappointment etching lines deeper into his already shadowed features. Mom, please, not in the mood for a showdown. Riley's resting upstairs. Just let her wake on her own, get her some breakfast when she does. With that, he rose, shoulders squared against the storm, and slipped out into the crisp evergreen morning, off to the office, though every fiber screamed he should stay, anchor this fracturing world. Zara lingered in stunned silence, a whirlwind of bewilderment churning in her chest. By noon, as the grandfather clock tolled like a funeral bell, Riley stirred in the bridal suite, the night's horrors crashing back in vivid, unrelenting waves, the shard's cold kiss to her throat, Shane's desperate pleas, the chasm of secrets she'd barely bridged. Darcy had swept in at dawn, a fleeting shadow of maternal steel, but Riley had been lost in fevered slumber, cocooned in linens that now felt like chains. Let her rest, Zara had murmured, voice thick with unspoken worry, and Darcy had obliged, a tender kiss to her daughter's fevered brow, a few hushed words with Zara over cooling tea, then gone, back to the city's relentless pulse. What lies had Shane spun for the household? What judgments simmered in the staff's sidelong glances? And today, the Valima, the grand unveiling meant to seal their union in champagne toasts and camera flashes, hung like a guillotine. An eerie hush blanketed the manor, amplifying the frantic tattoo of Riley's heart as she freshened up, splashing water that did little to wash away the dread. Emerging into the solarium, she froze under Zara's gaze, the older woman's smile a fragile mask as she rose, enveloping Riley in an embrace that smelled of vanilla and veiled regret, lips brushing her temple like a benediction laced with apology, guilt twisted in Zara's gut like a thorned vine. This wide-eyed girl, so achingly vulnerable, deserved fanfare, not this hollow echo. Swallowing hard, she broached the wound. The reception? We've had to postpone it, darling. Just for now. She'd assumed Shane had softened the blow, but Riley's eyes, wide, unblinking pools of crimson-rimmed confusion, betrayed the lie. Shame burned hotter in Zara's cheeks. Shane had an urgent meeting, left at first light. He should be back by evening. Relief flooded Riley like cool rain on parched earth, her shoulders sagging, a ghost of ease softening the rigid lines of her face. She chattered then, lighter than Zara had ever heard, words tumbling free like birds from a cage, before excusing herself with a polite nod, retreating to her room and leaving Zara adrift in a sea of unease. No glow lit Shane's absence, no marital spark to warm the hearth. Zara chalked it up to frayed nerves, willing the shadows away with a mother's stubborn faith. But truth clawed deeper. Her son, the man she'd handpicked Riley to redeem, hadn't tasted the joy she'd bartered his solitude for. At the office, the vultures circled. Colleagues gawked from cubicles, whispers slithering like smoke through the glass-walled empire. Caldwell calling off the Valima? What's the dirt? Phones buzzed with venomous queries. Rival execs probing for cracks, society pages hungry for scandal. Explanations spilled from Shane like blood from a fresh cut. Family matter. All good. Next quarter's the focus. But the barbs landed deep, each one a reminder of the girl upstairs, her terror the unwitting architect of his public flaying. The day dragged like a sentence, worse than any hostile takeover, a gauntlet of humiliation forged solely in her name. By dusk, he stormed home, frustration a live wire under his skin, only to find the master suite empty, a locked door mocking him from the guest wing down the hall. Mom's here, Riley, the whole staff's buzzing. What will they think? You have any idea the whispers this stirs? He jimmied the knob with a duplicate key, the click echoing like a verdict. There she lay on the canopied bed, curled like a wounded fawn, pallor ghosting her features. an undercurrent of anguish etching shadows beneath her lashes. If you're not feeling well, or if something's gnawing at you, talk to me. God, Riley, today I had to eat dirt in front of the entire board because of this. How long can I keep swallowing it all? His tone frayed at the edges, not a lash, but a lament, a bid to pierce the armor of her silence, to coax out the bitterness festering within. No blame, just the raw plea of a man teetering on the brink. Riley crumbled then, dissolving into his lap with a sob that clawed from her depths, a ritual echo of Darcy's arms, the only sanctuary she'd ever known in agony's grip. Shane's heart seized at her waxen hue. Her skin burned fever-hot under his palms as he cradled her hands, pulse racing like a trapped storm. Please stay in our room from now on. If you can't bear the closeness, fine, don't. But don't advertise it to the world. At least think of my family, Riley. For me. He drew her close, a fortress of whispers and warmth. Oblivious to the figure beyond the door, Zara, ashen and retreating, her deepest fears confirmed in the fracture she'd glimpsed. Morning's oddities, the Valima's ghost, all threads in a tapestry of unraveling. Shane carried her back to their quarters, administering a painkiller with surgeon's precision, watching as sleep claimed her in fitful waves. He stood vigil through the night, a sentinel in the velvet dark, torment's cruel jest, this exquisite beauty slumbering inches away while he burned with unslaked longing, eyes tracing the curve of her cheek like a map to forbidden shores. Their union had birthed only thorns and restlessness thus far, a barren harvest from vows meant to bloom. But this was merely the overture. Shadows of nights yet to come loomed, pregnant with trials untold. Weeks blurred into a haze, until one explosive afternoon, Zara cornered Riley in the sunlit conservatory, voice a whip crack of maternal desperation. Why won't you tell me? Why do you shrink from my son like he's poison? I turned a blind eye at first, thought it was your private tangle. But no more. If Shane's not the man for you, go back to your family. Spare him the slow bleed. A mother could only witness so much suffering before her heart fractured. Words unspoken screamed louder than any confession. A week wed, and their bed remained a battlefield of solitude, no intimacy forged, no peace softening Shane's haunted gaze. Riley stood at the threshold, head bowed, tears carving silent rivers down her cheeks. Mom? What's unraveling here? Shane's voice sliced the tension, eyes flicking between them like a blade seeking purchase. The mess you've buried, son, Zara fired back, unyielding. The tongues wagging outside these walls. Do you grasp it, Shane? This girl ghosts through the house like a specter, ignores guests, stonewalls conversation. What does she want? She's my wife, Mom. Whatever storm brews between us, I'll navigate it. And facing the wolves? Isn't that enough for you? Your son standing, content, unbroken. I never figured you'd doubt that. Propping Riley against him, he ushered her inside, her sobs a torrent now. He knew Zara's fury stemmed from love, pure as mountain snow, and she reeled at his defiance, backing this enigma over blood. That day, Riley surged forward unbidden, collapsing into his chest, a deluge of grief soaking his shirt. Ignore her words, Shane. It's not worth the war. A faint, opium-laced smile bloomed on her lips. She'd crossed the chasm, sought his harbor of her own volition. He clasped her hands, gentle as dawnlight. I told you, I'm not worthy. Why? He breathed, a conspirator's murmur against her temple, her blush a wildfire under his scrutiny. She yearned to unspool the truth but faltered, gaze skittering away. He eased her onto the bed, kneeling at her feet, cradling her hands as anchors, eyes boring into hers with quiet command. Tell me, why flinch from my touch? You freeze mid-sentence, bolt like a hunted thing. I'm your husband, Riley. When I reach for what's mine, you shatter the air with rejection. How long can this charade drag? I'm flesh and blood. A man's limits stretch only so far. If you don't speak... Her mind reeled. Darcy's venomous hush, that nightmare night's vice of pain. Hands flying to her face, she shattered the dam, words tumbling in a rush that left Shane reeling, shock etching his features like frost on glass. Divorce me, please. I can't. I won't ever be able to. The infection, it's ruined me. I can't give you what you crave, what your mother dreams of. Sobs racked her, clutching his hands in terror-trembled grip. Don't tell a soul. I'd sooner die, end it all, than face a doctor's cold stare. He stared, an eternity compressing into heartbeats, then pulled her into the harbor of his chest, the rawest agony she'd ever bared. A drama etched in scars he could only imagine. Her every hitch, every flinch replayed in his mind. The screams, the pleas, the uncharted hells she'd endured alone. And now trust bloomed fragile between them, a victory sweeter than any conquest. "No doctors," he vowed, sealing it with a kiss to her brow, lifting her chin to meet his solemn gaze. "I'll heal you myself." He tucked her into the pillows, hovering like a guardian seraph. "Trust me, Riley?" That night, the boardroom tightened, dissolved. Dr. Shane Caldwell resurfaced, a ghost from 3 years past. Once a prodigy in scrubs, he'd abandoned medicine after a patient's tragedy, a venomous serpent that had coiled around his soul, fangs sinking deep for seasons untold. Pivoting to business, he'd armored himself against the ghosts, chasing pinnacles his father had dreamed for him, empires built on grit, envied from afar, relinquished by the faint-hearted. No backward glances, he'd sworn, until now, fate's cruel encore dragging him back to the scalpel's edge. With infinite tenderness, he coaxed details from her lips, her inexperience a barrier crumbling under his care, fear and shame warring in her eyes, hands twisting as if to erase the past. He saw it all, the terror of confession, the chasm it carved in souls. So many women silenced their truths, forsaking the intimacy owed them, fractures spiderwebbing through unions until one dawn, the dam burst into irreparable ruin. Infections? Mere footnotes in misfortune's ledger, born of mishap or neglect, ballooning under the mind's tyrannical weight into monoliths of despair. Psyche twisted, it became a yoke, devouring joy. Yet treatment? A quiet alchemy, restoring wholeness in whispers of time. Her state floored him. He'd never fathomed depths so profound. Bolting to the garage, he returned laden with vials and instruments, finding her adrift in discomfort's tide, a chronic siege she'd weathered in secrecy. Gentle directives, sterile precision, he cleansed the wounds, her whimpers a symphony of vulnerability. Shame scorched her like brimstone, every probe a crucifixion, but salvation demanded sacrifice. And Shane forged the first link in her chain to freedom. Painkillers coursed through, 2 hours of torment yielding to serenity's tide, peace veiling her features like mist over the sound. For the first time in forever, she nestled against his chest, his fingers weaving solaced paths through her raven silk. "I'm not just your husband, Riley, your fiercest ally. When shadows rise, find me unyielding at your side. No fear, ever." She drank his words like elixir, a balm seeping into her marrow, and sleep claimed her unawares. Lashes fluttering shut on dreams unscarred. Shane aligned her form on the pillow, tresses spilling like midnight rivers. His gaze lingered on her flushed lips, then, compelled by some ancient rite, he brushed them with his own, a chaste invocation. A sigh escaped her, faint as a prayer, and he withdrew with a tempered smile. She was his lodestar, this porcelain enigma enduring infernos in silence. Resolve hardened, he wouldn't yield to the night. Dawn broke with purpose. He bundled her into the Mercedes, bound for the clinic where Dr. Javier waited, appointment sealed the night prior. Their bond? A decade's forge. She, his senior by years, yet equals in candor and camaraderie. Trust in her was absolute. Riley's specter had metastasized into Psyche's labyrinth, demanding Javia's lantern to illuminate the twists. The doctor greeted them with poised warmth, ushering Riley to the leather armchair. Shane lingered, a silent bulwark as Javia unfurled the tale with velvet diplomacy, hand on Riley's, smile a lifeline. "Let's talk, dear, what weighs on you?" But silence reigned. Riley's eyes darted to Shane, then away, cheeks aflame with mortification. Still, Javia's grace chipped at the walls, unraveling knots in hushed counsel until relief's first bloom curved Riley's lips, a tentative dawn. Javia armed Shane with directives, regimens for the fear's unraveling, though his healer's instincts needed no script. Curiosity alone drew him, her counsel as a woman in white, a echo from lapsed chapters. "Lunch?" she proposed with a wink, but Shane demurred. He craved seclusion, a stolen interlude for two. Hand in hers, warm, trusting now, he navigated the corridor's sterile gleam toward freedom. The elevator side opened to the right, disgorging a figure that halted time. Stethoscope draped like a talisman, tailored brown coat hugging curves, golden eyes locking with predatory precision. "Layla, 3 years vanished," now materializing like a specter from Seattle's underbelly. She'd fled to America's sprawl after their implosion. No whisper of her return. She blocked his path, a smile sharp as shattered glass slicing the air. Shane. Long time. He pivoted, steering Riley past, but Layla pursued, heedless of prying eyes. Desperation's fire unquenched after seasons in exile. "I'm sorry," he clipped, voice a locked gate, Riley's fingers tightening in his. Layla bolted after, heels echoing judgment, cornering them at the exit. Indifference to witnesses, only he mattered, this phantom demanding absolution. One word, that's all. Shane whirled, steel in his stare, Riley's presence a shield. "Stay clear of my path. And don't unsettle my wife." The words landed like velvet thunder, etching the truth. He was claimed, whole. Layla's eyes widened, flicking to the petite form at his side. Petite girl at his side. A fragile wisp ensnared in her own web of doubt and dread, her wide eyes darting between the intruders like a deer caught in twin headlights. Trembling, she shrank closer to Shane, head bowed in a fortress of curls, as if Layla's very shadow threatened to swallow her whole. No spark of curiosity lit her gaze, only the quiet storm of a heart too bruised to probe deeper wounds. "I just want to talk." "Shane?" Layla pressed, her voice a silken blade. Honeyed desperation masking the venom beneath. But his response cracked like a thunderclap. Raw and unyielding. "I've told you, there's nothing left to say." The ferocity rippled through the sterile corridor, glancing off Layla like rain on slate, but it struck Riley like a gale. She surged forward, burrowing into his chest, her fingers clutching his shirt as if it were the last tether to solid ground. Layla watched, seething, golden eyes narrowing to slits of smoldering envy as Shane guided Riley away, his arm a steel band around her waist, her every step a whispered claim of sanctuary. 3 years ago, that man had been the axis of Layla's world, her boss, her flame, the first woman to crack the armor of Dr. Shane Caldwell. Assistant by day, confidant by the dim glow of late-night charts, everything hummed with electric normalcy, a rhythm of stolen glances and unspoken promises. Until that cursed shift's end. One final sweep through the emergency ward, the fluorescent hum a dirge as his eyes snagged on an empty gurney. There, tangled in sheets with a faceless stranger, Layla, betrayal blooming like a bruise under the harsh lights. The floor vanished beneath him, a chasm yawning wide. Love curdled to ash in his throat. He'd adored her, dreamed of rings and rituals, a future etched in forever. But she confessed with a shrug. "Darling, I'm woven from wild threads. Fidelity's just not my weave." That dawn, he severed it all, scrubs shed like snakeskin, medicine's ghosts haunting his heels. Heartbreak's venom lingered, a slow poison through seasons of shadowed nights, until resolve forged him anew. And now? She stood before him again, a specter he'd buried deep. He turned his back, cold as cascade snow. Back at the manor, as twilight bled through the latticed windows, Riley's voice trembled over dinner's remnants. Curiosity laced with a jealousy that painted her cheeks in sunset hues. A rare bloom, Shane noted with a pang. Her vulnerability a mirror to his own guarded scars. Who was she? But he deflected with a feather-light kiss to her temple, lips lingering on the satin of her skin, steering the tide to safer shores. His yesteryears? Locked vaults he had no key for, not yet. Unseen, fate's cruel puppeteer stirred. Layla, sly as a fox in the henhouse, had wheedled every shadowed detail from Dr. Javia in a casual aside. Shane's fatal slip in swearing her to silence on Riley's fragile saga. From those whispers she spun a web of ruin, threads destined to sunder their fragile peace. Weeks wove onward, medicine's quiet alchemy working miracles. Riley's gaze softened, shadows receding like mist at noon. She leaned into his orbit now, tentative chats over morning coffee, her laughter a fragile bell amid family gatherings. A month slipped by, the specter fading to echo. Zara basked in the thaw, her son's home aglow with unspoken triumphs. Riley's flinches yielded to quiet smiles as Shane drew near, his vows a balm that coaxed trust from hiding. Fear's grip loosened, a serpent slain, and contentment settled over him like a well-earned crown. That afternoon, ensconced in his corner office overlooking Puget Sound's restless churn, Shane's phone hummed to life. A video call from the manor, Riley's face filling the screen like dawn breaking. He answered with a grin that crinkled his eyes, voice dipping to that intimate timbre reserved for her alone. "Hey, beautiful, how's the day treating you? Missing me already?" Her reply was a whisper-soft murmur, laced with that newfound ease. "More than you know. But don't worry, nothing a little rest won't fix." Yet shadows lingered in her hazel depths, a flicker of the old ache she'd hidden since Dawn's twinge. He probed gently, "What's got you so quiet? Everything all right?" But she dipped her gaze, lips curving in evasion. 2 days without her meds. The flare crept like a thief, unbidden and unforgiving. Before words could bridge the gap, the office door flew wide with a splintering crash, hinges groaning in protest. There stood Layla, uninvited, unyielding, storming the sanctum like a tempest unchained. Shane bolted upright, shock etching his jawline taut. "What the hell are you doing here?" His bark was ice over fire, but she closed the distance in a haze of perfume and audacity. Pressing against him, lips grazing his throat in a frenzy of fevered whispers, her hands mapping old trails with desperate fervor. The call hummed on, forgotten, Riley's wide eyes devouring the betrayal unfolding in pixelated horror. "Take me back, Shane. Feel this fire? I know your restlessness, that girl. She'll never quench it. She's no wife, just a patient you've chained to your hearth. Look at me. Let me heal what's breaking." Her plea slithered like smoke, laced with venom that twisted the knife. Shane reeled, a maelstrom of fury and disbelief crashing through him. "Layla, stop this madness. Get out, now." Shoving her back with arms that trembled not from desire, but disgust. Undeterred, she lunged again, nails raking his collar in a bid to reclaim what fate had scorched. On the screen, Riley's world imploded, color draining to ghostly pallor, a flush of humiliated rage blooming beneath. Layla's spectacle unfolded raw and relentless, and as the barbs flew, what do you even see in her? No fire, no grace. Why chain yourself to that mannish shadow? Riley's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob that shattered into a guttural cry. Pain lanced through her like lightning, the flare igniting into inferno. She screamed, the phone tumbling from numb fingers to clatter on the oak floor, her frame convulsing in the frame's merciless eye. Shane whirled at the sound, horror dawning as Layla's obstinacy blinded her to the witness. "Riley? Riley, look at me. Breathe, damn it!" His voice fractured, a lifeline hurled into the void, but only echoes of agony replied, shrieks that clawed at his soul. With a roar, he slammed Layla against the wall, forearm pinning her like a vice, eyes ablaze with primal wrath. "If anything happens to my wife because of you, I'll end you, rip your world to shreds before the final blow." Layla's gaze burned crimson, rejection's humiliation a brand she couldn't quench. "You cast me aside, Shane Caldwell, and you'll pay in blood." He abandoned her there, snatching the phone mid-scream, bolting for the door. Zara's line rang unanswered, out, perhaps, in the garden's deceptive calm. The drive blurred into frenzy, tires screaming over rain-slicked blacktop, the estate's gates yawning like jaws. He took the stairs 3 at a time, heart a war drum in his ribs, bursting into the room to a sight that eviscerated him. Riley, swathed in crimson agony, crumpled on the Persian rug like a fallen rose. Her lips were ash, breath's shallow gasps. Heavy bleeding had sapped her to the brink, consciousness fleeing like smoke. That day, he learned the anatomy of apocalypse, cradling her limp form, the world narrowing to the fragile flutter at her throat. "Stay with me, love. Fight, Riley. For us." The convoy to Harborview was a gauntlet of red lights and pleas. His hands slick with her blood as he coaxed her back from the edge, voice a ragged litany against the roar of the engine. Zara arrived in a whirlwind of tears, but Shane was steel, gowned and gloved, eyes locked on Javia's grim nod. "It's dire, Shane. Step back." "Let us." But he shook his head. "Resolve a fortress. Today I bind my soul to hers or watch her slip through my fingers. No half measures." His eyes rimmed scarlet, a warrior on love's battlefield, Javia at his flank with a cadre of steel-nerved surgeons. He barred the men, Riley's shame, that festering secret born of male scrutiny's chill, would not parade before strangers. This porcelain universe in his hands? Worth every scar. Laparotomy's blade kissed steel, his hands steady as ancient oaks, Pulse a rebel's thunder he leashed with whispered prayers. He wouldn't lose her, not to delay, not to deceit. Midway through the crimson dance, truth unveiled, the root of her torment, a specter from adolescence's cusp. Puberty's storm had raged, Darcy's covert consult with a specialist unearthing a minor rift, a simple procedure, vital as breath for her future's bloom. Darcy had sanctioned it in shadows, but terror bloomed unchecked. What whispers, what slurs if scandal broke? No kin confided, no safeguards woven, only the dread implanted deep, a seed that choked Riley's spirit, festering into isolation's abyss. Darcy's shame mirrored her daughter's. A mother's armor cracked. The scalpel sang victory. Her heart steadied to a lullaby. Javia's hand on his shoulder was absolution, and Shane's smile broke through tears, a benediction from the divine. 24 hours blurred in vigil. Then, in the recovery ward's hush, her lashes fluttered, seeking him first. Hunched guardian, exhaustion's mask yielding to relief. Darcy hovered, guilt a shroud, words faltering. That woman, clinging like ivy, what hold does she... But Shane leaned close, lips brushing her ear in a conspirator's hush, winking at her jealousy-fueled flush. Later, my storm, when it's just us. Darcy gathered her for homecoming, but Shane claimed her. Manor-bound, Zara and he weaving a cocoon of soups and sunlit vigils. Days melted into wholeness. Riley bloomed anew, life's cadence rediscovered. Her debts to his sacrifices a vow etched in fire, to quench his every thirst, every shadowed yearning. Layla's gambit crumbled in a blaze of hubris, parading before the press with venomous lies. Shane Caldwell's caged his wife in sickness, his cruelty the blade that drove her to the knife's edge. Headlines howled, vultures circling the void of Riley's unseen silhouette. Shane countered with thunder, a gala at the Space Needle, invitations a gauntlet thrown to allies and adversaries alike. There, amid crystal flutes and starlit spires, he unveiled her, arm in arm, Riley radiant in seafoam silk that hugged her curves like a lover's sigh, fielding flashes with a poise that silenced doubters. Her smile, a beacon, eyes locked on him with unshakable faith. A reporter thrust the mic her way, voice slicing the din. Mrs. Caldwell, life with Shane? As a husband, what's the verdict? She stood sentinel in emerald elegance, lightning in her gaze for the ghost of rivals past, beauty amplified by the quiet steel of trust. A miracle? No, miracles pale beside him. Shane Caldwell is my godsend, woven from grace and grit. Her head found his shoulder, his lips sealing the vow on her brow, a tableau that etched eternity. That night, embers reignited. Layla slunk into exile, borders blurring her flight, the specter of Shane's retribution a chill wind at her heels. Sari-clad Riley yielded to his tide, silk whispering secrets as he traced her form with worship's fire, her sighs a symphony surrendering to the storm. Rain lashed the panes like applause, birthing their saga anew, from ashes of defeat, a love unbowed. Without him, she might have faded to whispers. Now, entwined in boundless devotion and reverence, they danced into dawn, a flawless genesis, etched in stars.